Okay, we're going to start, and we're recording. So I just want to say good evening. Welcome to Tuning Snort for the Rookie, or How Do I Learn to Stop Worrying and Love My Pig. For those of you who are not familiar with Snort, anyone in the audience familiar with it? Yes, no, maybe?
Sit over here so we can see it,
There's outlets there too. But okay, so what I want to talk about is at a high level, and I'm doing this unfortunately not in full screen mode for some reason. GoToMeeting just doesn't really like full screen very much, so we got to tolerate my stupid slide outlines here. Um, okay, Snort has a lot of rules available. There's over 24,000 right now, and it's sometimes hard to figure out which ones make sense for your environment and what you have to do once you have alerts, because most IDSs, all of them as a matter of fact, will generate a lot of alerts. You put it onto a network that's not been well tuned with a default policy, and you get a bunch of things that's going to say it's fines out there that you probably want to take a look at. But you'll actually get way more than you can physically look at in a day. So how do you fix that? So there's some things that I'm going to talk about as background first, then I'll get into the actual demonstration part of this a little bit later. So the first thing I want to do is figure out, what does your home net look like? So, is your environment primarily Windows, Linux, or a mix? For those of you, everyone competing in CCDC this year? Yes, no? Oh, you should. It's a lot of fun.
It is.
A day full of really bad for you snacks. Uh, oh, it's awesome for that. And plus, hey, the chili every year is really good. Highly recommend it. So, anyway, so you got to figure out what kind of environment you're trying to protect. Is it mostly Windows, Linux, or a mix? Um, Also, you want to protect your inbound server traffic or outbound web traffic. What is the primary job of the sensor in the that you're working with? In the CCDC, you'll be focusing mostly on inbound server traffic and things headed towards your internal network, and also from workstation to workstation, because you never know. Someone might be able to compromise one of your hosts remotely, and that's what the red team does. They've done it successfully pretty much every year I've worked with CCDC, and so you'll be able to see what's happening between one host and another on your internal network. And you want to do a map of your network for hosts and services. For this, Nmap is your friend. For those who didn't see it, there is a recorded Nmap seminar out there. You can take a look at that one and get a little bit better idea on how to use Nmap. One of the things that's talked about in security a lot is that they'll talk about your network as being kind of like an egg. And a lot of networks have a hard, crunchy exterior, but once you get inside of them, it's pretty soft and gooey, and you can do pretty much anything you want to it. So what do you want to do with that? You want to actually put in IDS, and IDS is a way of kind of hardening that inner part of the network, so that you can actually get a better idea of what's going on once people are already in the door. I've heard security kind of an analogy. If you take a big company that's got a corporate campus, anyone ever seen Allstate's campus off of 294 up on the north side? Allstate has this big honking campus, a lot of buildings. It's actually like half mile end to end. It's a really good sized place, a lot of buildings on it, but it's surrounded by a big tall fence, and it's got spikes on the top. You probably don't want to try climbing it. And when you but you can enter in through a visitor gate that's got a guard shack. That guard shack is really like a firewall. Basically, you go up to the guard shack, and if you show up, you give him your name. If he's got your name on a list for and you have a name on the list of someone who said that you're there to visit them that day, he'll let you in. And in general, he'll let you in if you just look like a normal person driving a normal car. If you come in a car that's got a whole bunch of guns and things loaded in the back, he's probably not going to let you in. Or if you're driving a car that's full of things that look like explosives in a van that you're going to drive and park next to a building, again, he might not let you in. Or if your name's not on the list. So that's what a firewall does. But let's say that you did that, you drove in, and you got inside there, you had a name, you knew somebody that worked there, your name was on the list, you managed to find out that information. So you got in, and then you reach inside your trunk, pull out your guns and bombs, and start doing bad things inside the campus. Well, the guard shack is doing nothing about that right now. That's where IDS comes into it. It's more like a wandering guard inside the campus that's able to find out what's going on and what things are happening inside the network. So how do you harden your internal network a little bit? Well, some of the things you want to do, you want to turn off unnecessary services. And for this, NetStat is your friend. You also want to treat your systems like your bank account. You don't let your friends traipse around your bank account. You don't put your bank records outside your front door. You don't want to let people, even your friends, know about that. A good motto there is, I like you, I just don't trust you. And that's a good way to live. Um, so where do you start? Well, you want to start with, what services do I need to allow in or out? Most networks will allow things into the network, such as, you know, inbound web services. So you have a web server you're standing up for the internet. Well, you want people to be able to reach that. In some cases, you want to have inbound DNS, so that DNS servers out on the internet that know about various websites out there will be able to tell you about where they're at, so that your DNS servers in turn can tell your users how to get there. You also want to have mail. Mail has to go in, it has to go out. So then the other thing you want to consider is, where can users access my network? Because unlike the days of old where you had a firewall and everyone had a desktop, pretty much everyone today has a laptop. And so your network is not really just a one gateway into the network. There's a gateway there, sure, and there's there's a nice static road going in and out of there, a pathway for all sorts of data traffic. But people come into the network, open up their laptops, and suddenly they're on the inside network, and they can do a lot of things. And you want to say, well, did I control this? Have I controlled my wireless access? Have I controlled my wired access? Because a lot of places they'll have conference rooms where you can plug in to the wire and in a conference room, and you'll actually be on their internal network. Um, and then, have I accounted for all the systems on my network? Is there anyone there that doesn't belong? And that's something else you want to pay attention to, because anyone see Jurassic Park, the first one? Remember how they said, "Oh, we counted all the dinosaurs. There's none missing." Well, there were none missing, but there were extra dinosaurs, because suddenly they were reproducing and they weren't supposed to be doing that. And that was a big risk in their particular security situation. Same thing can happen in your network. So what's on my system? I said Netstat's your friend. Well, here's Netstat and output from a Windows 2008 server. And you can see there's a whole bunch of services that are open. It actually goes on for several pages. And this is a fairly typical out-of-the-box Windows 2008 server. And a lot of them are like this, where they've got a ton of things opened up and a ton of things built that you may or may not want to allow on the network. So you want to look at those services, determine what you need to have open and what you don't, and you want to start turning these things off. That's part of hardening your network as well. So what kind of approach are we going to take? Well, it's really pretty simple. Once we determine what's allowed and what kind of risks there are to the deployment, you want to mitigate those risks and then monitor the environment continuously. When new risks come out, and during the CCDC, you'll have some new risks introduced to you during the course of the day. But in your network, in real life, again, you'll have new risks introduced to you all the time, because new things get discovered every day. So what should be allowed? Well, I mentioned mail, DNS, HTTP, HTTPS on the approved servers, but only on those approved servers. Um, you've got a corporate mail server. You'll have a mail. Will you have mail in the environment, Blue? I forget. Yeah, maybe not. You will have DNS, and only the DNS server that's authorized should be able to go outside of the network to get more DNS updates. You don't want users to be able to get that themselves, because they could go out and get rogue DNS servers, end up on bad websites somewhere in Romania, Russia, China. Brazil is actually a big place too for hackers. And they might end up going to websites that they get phished on, and they'll get owned, and lots of bad things will happen to them. Then you got some other optional inbound services: NTP, Network Time Protocol; IPsec for point-to-point or client-to-site VPNs. You want to restrict those as well. As far as outbound services, most networks will have, in smaller organizations, will have a pretty much unrestricted outbound access. You might want to think about that, because, again, how many services do you really need to let out of your network? Do you have a web proxy? If so, that's the only thing that should be sending outbound web requests, because you want all your users to go through your web proxy. So, and same thing with your mail server. You only want your authorized mail server sending mail out. You don't want unauthorized mail servers sending mail out. And same thing with unauthorized web servers. You want to control those in the organization as well. And in the CCDC, you also have a scoring app. That needs to be there, that needs to be up, and that needs to be accessible. If the scoring app can't reach your servers to check to see if services are up and running, you lose points. So where do you want to start with IDS? You want to start with a sane rule base. Like I mentioned, there's tens of thousands of rules out there. Many of them are published by Snort and Sourcefire, which owns the Snort project. And there's also some third-party rules. There's tons of those out there. Some of those are really, really good. There's some companies that put out some excellent Snort rules. There's also a lot of companies that put out some really crappy ones that you do not want to run in your machine because those things will chew up a lot of RAM and CPU and won't necessarily produce meaningful results. It's also possible to write your own Snort rules. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. During the CCDC, I'll probably encourage you not to go ahead and do that because it'll take a lot of time and you won't get a lot of benefit out of it. But Snort uses a balanced approach by default. It usually turns on about 2,000 rules, and this will be set up in your preloaded policy in the CCDC. So how do you determine your risks? Well, there's a number of ways to do it, but two major ones are Nmap and analysis via Nessus. Nmap is a network mapping software. That's what it stands for. It'll map the various operating systems that you have in your network, the hosts that are out there. It'll also map the various services that are responding on those hosts. Very important thing to do, and it's going to be strongly encouraged in the CCDs that you do that so you find out what's on your network, because if you don't know what's on your network, it's real hard to protect it. Also, you want to do some analysis via Nessus. Nessus is a great tool for scanning various hosts out there to find out what they might be vulnerable to. And it'll make some recommendations like, hey, you should patch this. So you want to go ahead and do that as well. Now, when you're running Nessus, you might want to do it two ways. You might want to run it from the outside in, from the outside of the firewall, to determine what kind of things are able to get in and what kind of things would be visible to hosts outside your firewall. You also might want to run an internal scan to find out what those hosts are vulnerable to. If somebody does get compromised, then use that as a host to launch other attacks from. Sometimes that's called island hopping, where somebody out of the internet starts in one place and they compromise a host inside a network, and then they control that host remotely, and that host then has privileges to do all sorts of things internally. So you want to do that and then compile the results and apply the appropriate patches. Now, there's a lot of risks that are out there, and Nmap and Nessus will tell you these, and you want to go out there and shut down any additional ports that are unauthorized. So, for example, if you've got a server that's answering on on the web that shouldn't be, turn the web services on that device off. Same thing if that server has a database running on it. Sometimes you can access databases from the web, sometimes or from other hosts in your network. Almost never should you allow external hosts to access your database servers from the web. That's just a bad practice. And you want to review your IDS alerts. So good news is that because CCDC is going to be using Sourcefire, the commercial version of Snort, it'll be a lot easier. It's going to be there, it'll be installed, it'll be licensed, ready to go, but it's not going to be tuned for you. You're going to have to do some of that yourself. Now, the Sourcefire GUI is really easy to use and very powerful and provides a lot of nice analysis tools, and I'm actually going to show that in a couple seconds here. And the process of event analysis using Sourcefire's GUI or any other IDS is pretty much the same. What you want to do is you want to go through the events, determine which ones are relevant, and determine whether or not it was actually successful, and then go through your analysis to mitigate the attack and then make it go away. So how do you do that? Well, in Sourcefire, you go to Analysis, Intrusion, and Events. And Sourcefire does some things that are really cool with impact flags. And I'll talk about those a little bit more in a second. You want to look at only the ones. Then you want to drill into the event itself. And so I'm going to flip over to Sourcefire here. And here is Sourcefire's event analysis page. And what I've done is gone out to Analysis, Intrusion, Events, and Events. And I'm looking at the various events that are out there. This might be a little small, a little hard to see. I'll bump it up in size. So that's a little bit bigger. And you can see on the left-hand side, we've got a bunch of what we call impact flags. Sourcefire has the ability to actually listen passively in your network as well. And it's going to build up a database, just like Nessus or Nmap would do, except it's not doing an active scan, it's just listening passively and building up that information. It'll map out the operating systems you've got, the services that are running, the client applications, and then also it will map out the protocols that are running on that network. And then based on that, it'll say, okay, well, this is a Windows 2008 server. It has these associated vulnerabilities known to be out there with that patched version of Windows 2008. Now, what does that mean to you? Well, let's say that you get a very hostile attack coming in. It's one of the latest and greatest Microsoft IIS attacks. Microsoft IIS has had some vulnerabilities in the past. But if that IIS attack goes to like let's say a desktop machine that has no web services, that machine's not going to answer. Let's say it's a Windows 7 box with no web services. It's just going to drop that packet to the floor. That gets an impact flag of 3 because it's not even relevant to the host. The host is not going to answer on that port. Then the impact flag of 2 is, let's say, it would be that same IIS attack hit your Linux Apache server. Well, Linux Apache is the wrong kind of device. It's not going to respond to the attack, even though it's a web server. But the impact 1 would be, hey, it hit a Windows 2008 server or 2003. That device is in fact running web services, and that version of IIS is known to be vulnerable to the attack in question. You want to pay attention to those. And so let's just pick one of these. I'm going to pick something that's fairly easy to understand, and I'm going to pick a buffer overflow attack here. And I'm just going to dive into it a little bit further. And this one occurred on several different source and destination IP addresses, and I want to actually look at it and figure out, who actually this was, and I can find out a little bit more about the target IP addresses if I want to. There's a little host icon here, and I can click on that, and I can find out, what kind of services are running on the host. In this case, I'm running DC RPC, so this box should be a Windows 2000 XP or server. There was another IP address that responded in the past it looked like with Linux. But just ignore that for the time being. So this box is, let's say it's a Windows Server 2003 box, and it's actually got a service on it for DC RPC, which is Microsoft normal port 135 type traffic. So I'm going to go and look at the packet view of this. Now the packet view will actually give you a couple pieces of information. One, it'll tell you about the full, here's the buffer overflow attempt rule. And if you don't know what the buffer overflow attempt rule is, one of the things you can do is you can look at the documentation for the rule, find out from the documentation what the affected systems are, what will happen, denial of service or execute arbitrary code on the machine, and it'll give you some references like the Microsoft Security Bulletin. This is particularly useful because the Microsoft Security Bulletin will tell you what patch is necessary to make this machine well and not vulnerable to the attack. And that's the sort of thing you want to do with your intrusion events. Make sure the machine's patched, and then you can go forward and that box has been secured. Now, if you want to, you can also see what the packet looks like, and I'm just going to expand it out. You familiar with Wireshark? Yes, no? Strongly recommend getting familiar with Wireshark. Very easy to use tool. Wireshark is a network sniffer tool. It tells you what's going on inside of a packet. And this is a view very similar to what you'd see in Wireshark. It'll actually show you what's going on inside the packet, what the packet's doing in this particular case. And so you could actually map that out and take a look at, say, okay, yes, this is vulnerable. I do want to take a look at this machine. So that's how I would actually go through and evaluate an event. And in this case, I would go out to that particular Windows machine, take a look at it, figure out, has it been patched, yes or no? And then once it's patched, then I would actually go back to this and review the event and say that I'm done looking at it. So it's a fairly straightforward approach. I've gone over at a very high speed, but it does take a little bit of time to actually go through and do that. But actually, the nice thing about this is if you go back to the main view, and I'm going to go back here to the summary. And when I look at all the packets that are out there are a lot of different events, but there's actually a fairly small number of the impact ones that I actually have to take a look at. In your CCDC environment, there'll be even less than this. This is a demo system meant to be, really hard to look, or to have a lot of events on it to look into. Now, some of these events out there are ones that you might eventually decide, I just don't even care about that, and I can turn these rules off. And like this one, the ICOMP info destination unreachable. I don't really care if there's a destination unreachable. Um, and so what I might do for that one is I might disable the rule. And all I have to do is just click disable rule. And it'll give me the ability to turn that rule off. All I have to do is just say disable it in all locally created policies. And it'll turn the rule off, and then you won't see those events anymore. And that's the sort of thing you want to do for events that are not relevant to your system. You want to make sure that you turn off rules like that. And that's part of the tuning process. Now, one of the other things you're going to want to do is, and let me just flip back to the presentation part again, is so you figured out, you've looked at the rules that are out there. And so if it's a Snort supplied rule, it'll have what's called a SID, SID, less than 1 million. If you have a SID greater than 1 million, that's a local rule, one that somebody created by hand, or one that you got from the community out, the Sourcefire or the greater Snort community. Community rules are a little harder to check into. They're not always as well documented. The Snort supplied rule are a lot better. And where you can see this SID, so I go back to this, is, see this number here, 402? That would be the SID. And that appears in every single event that's there. There's always a number, 396, 402, whatever it might be. And that'll be the actual rule that you can look into. If you don't even want to drill into it very much, if you want to just look at this rule here too, if you right click, there's also documentation available here. So you can just go right down and get that same documentation page. So having the documentation readily available like that, having the ability to look at the packet to be able to get that host information from the system, that'll be huge in the CCDC because it'll really speed up your response time. Doing this in Snort, native in the open source community, it's a little harder. And so far, we tried to get people to use in the past competitions. None of them have been successful. So when I go back to the presentation side, there's some other things that I want to do, and that is you want to update your rule base. Well, you want to tune out your false positives. You want to tune out your meaningless events. And how do you do that? Well, let's take a look at our policy. And I actually have several policies that are up here. I'm going to edit this one, and we'll take a look at the policy. Now, one of the things you can do in your policy is we give you a group of rules that are out there. They'll tell you things like the category of rules. Now, these categories, some of them make a lot of sense. They're very, they're by, these are by category, but we also have some that are platform specific. The platform specific rules, this will really help you out because you can do things like, if you have no Apple in your environment, you can turn off all the Apple rules. And so I can just go in here, I can grab all the rules that apply to Apple 10.0, which is a really old version of OS X, and I can change the rule state from on to disable. And so I just disabled a whole bunch of rules that if they ever were to generate a event, that would be a false positive. So that helps tune your policy. And so it's a pretty quick and easy way to do that. And you can do that for any platform that you don't have in your network, like Caldera Linux, Cray. There won't be any Cray systems out there in the CCDC. And you might want to go ahead and go through and do that and tune out your policy, make sure that all those rules are off. Because if they ring or they were to trigger, those would be false positives and they wouldn't be real events that you want to pay attention to. And again, this is the sort of thing you want to do with any IDS. You want to make sure you go through and take a look and turn off rules that don't pertain to your network. Now, Sourcefire also provides one additional thing that's really cool and makes this process a heck of a lot easier. We have an automated process that'll do this. So once the system's been running for a while, you can actually tell it to generate recommendations for you, and it'll generate recommendations to turn rules on and turn rules off based on what it's seen in the network. And so this is actually going to be probably our best friend because it'll tune your system 90% of the way automatically. It's going to do a lot of that heavy lifting of turning off categories of rules for systems that you don't even have out of the box automatically without you doing any of that kind of effort. Huge time saver. And time is kind of a crucial issue in the competition. And I'm going to recommend that you guys go ahead and do this. And we'll actually even provide a couple of simple one-page instruction sheets on how to do some of this stuff. So once that's done and I'm finished with it, I want to save my policy, commit the changes to it, and then what I want to do is I'll actually go ahead and apply the policy to the sensor in question. And your sensor will be updated with more recent policy. And then you just want to, rinse and repeat. So you want to go through and just continue analyzing the events that come through in your system and pay attention to the new ones that have shown up. And then once you've, say you've already gone through and you've looked at all these impact on reachables, you can take this, you can go down here and click review. I've looked at those. I don't want to look at them again. So those will be off your screen. You don't have to pay attention to them anymore. So that'll be a simple and easy way to go through and handle your intrusion events. And it's much, much easier than doing it in Snort. Any of the Snort GUIs that are out there, there's several available, but in my opinion, all of them pretty much suck. And I've used several. So at a high level, that's what Sourcefire is going to do for you in the CCDC. And see, I've already talked about doing the elementary tuning. And I've talked about also you want to focus on those impact ones. Those will be your priorities. You want to handle those first. And once you've gotten through those, then you might want to go through and look at some of the other ones that are ringing a lot. Those might be an indication that something's misconfigured and you want to get rid of it. So what I'd like to do at this point is open it up to any questions. And I'm going to see, are there any questions out there? Okay, yes. Anyone have any questions that they want to raise their hand and talk about? I think there might be one. Can we get the set of slides? Absolutely. I'll send them to Lou. He can have them. They'll be posted on the CCDC site. I'm also going to post a white paper out there which talks about how to go through an event analysis and how to do some of the things I've shown you how to do already. And that'll help. That'll suffice for written instructions on how to do things. So this was probably an unusually short talk. I don't see a lot of other questions. Oh, there's more questions. Cool. Okay. So
does it work on Windows and Linux also, or just Linux based?
This particular system actually runs as an appliance. You're going to have virtual appliances in the CCDC. We run in VMware ESX, and that's what you'll be running all your boxes on anyway. Snort can run in Windows and Linux. I never recommend Windows, and the reason why is because there's also some compiled rules, and the compiled rules are there's a lot of pre-release vulnerabilities that we put out there for both Snort and Sourcefire. The pre-release vulnerabilities are things like Microsoft will let us know that, hey, we found a vulnerability in our code. Here's the way that we're going to fix it, but that fix won't be available for another 2 weeks. And they'll tell us about that. We'll write a rule to protect you against the vulnerability, but Microsoft has asked us not to tell you in that code that we have for the rule syntax. They want us to obfuscate that. And so what we do is we compile the rule so you can't see what it's actually doing. And then hopefully the hacker community that's out there wouldn't be able to reverse engineer an exploit against the vulnerability.
It just shows that there was an attack. It doesn't protect it, right?
Well, we can be IPS and actually be in line and protect you against the attacks. In the CCDC, that will not be supported. We're going to just have it as a passive listening tool. Well, you will have a firewall there as well. The firewall is going to be a pfSense, and we actually have an upcoming seminar that we're going to do on pfSense. I don't know if it'll be next month or the month after that. I'll have to check the schedule. It'll be on the site.
Yeah, it's on there now. It has the list of scheduled.
Yeah, I don't know if we scheduled pfSense before, but we need to make sure that one gets on there.
Yeah.
It's actually probably more important than Metasploit. So
John should do that one.
pfSense?
Yeah.
I have no idea how to work.
That's okay. I can.
You.
Actually, Lou and I will probably share the PFSense um, implementation and discussion of how that works because both of us are running it at home. So it's actually not that hard. It's a GUI interface, pretty easy to work with. Set firewall rules, be done.
And I guess the other note is registration will be posted in 7 days from now.
Okay, for the next seminar or for the CCDC?
No, for the CCD sign up.
Okay.
So teams can sign up in 7 days.
Okay. And we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be a really fun competition this year. It's going to be a little bit different than you've seen in the past, but Lou and I are working on the environment probably the next week or two.
And John.
And John.
And John.
And also another guy named Steve who will hopefully be at the competition again this year. He'll add a lot of fun.
Do we know what system is going to be this year's competition?
Yeah,
It's on the website.
it's on the
Yeah, I
website.
say you've seen the picture, but it doesn't tell you like exact OS or anything.
Well, we haven't finished building it yet, so
It says like, oh, web server or like,
more information will be posted once we've built the pods, and then once we have them built, then they're in the net labs, and then as the teams are registered or signed up, they will be given access to use the pods like they did last year.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you can go in there and discover everything that there is to know about the pod.
Yeah.
we're not using no kind of what version of patches we're going to have on it. You know, how secure is the system when we get it?
Well, I'll tell you this way. The best way to look at this is when it's all built, it's basically click next, zero patched.
Right.
So you need everything.
And you can count on the fact that there will be some Linux systems. So our first class that we did was on Linux 101. You should know how to use Linux. Linux is incredibly important. I would recommend building a copy of CentOS, hint, hint, because I think CentOS will probably be the. I'm sorry?
It's going to be the e-commerce server.
Don't know. It'll be one of the servers, actually, probably more than one. But that's the flavor of Linux we're going to be working with this year. As a matter of fact, I just built those machines today. I'm sorry, no Ubuntu? I don't think we're going to do it just because it keeps it simpler if it's just one kind. So for the people who are Ubuntu or Debian fans, sorry. I lean more towards the Red Hat CentOS and Fedora Track. I like those better myself. Ubuntu's nice, just I don't use it as much. Someone asked if they can get an overview of Sourcefire. I have a PDF, and I'll attach that to this particular presentation as well.
Okay.
And that overview will cover how do you go through and do event analysis. It has very, very specific instructions on how to go through and access these individual screens inside of the system.
How long does it take to set everything from scratch?
As far as the Sourcefire stuff, that's
pretty easy. I can get a system up and running in a couple hours. Yeah.
Well, you're talking about also configuring. I mean, just to get it to log in is probably 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's really very, very easy. And I'm saying that also as brief commercial. I work for Sourcefire, so they are my employer, and I do like their stuff. And the stock's going great. Well, just bear in mind I'm not a financial professional, and your financial results might vary. Anyway, so yes, you will get an overview of Sourcefire. You will get the system will already be configured and ready to go for you. All you're going to have to do is do the tuning and look at the events inside of it. So you're going to be more of a user as opposed to an operational kind of person in it. So at a high level, that's what we're going to be doing for the CCDC this year for intrusion detection. Please be ready to use it because that will tell you an awful lot of things that I've seen students overlook. Like there's a huge number of failed login attempts off of a particular machine. One year when I was a judge at CCDC, one of the red team guys got up and said, "Hey, look, If you looked in your syslog, you would have seen there were about 2,000 or 3,000 failed login attempts. That's a good indication that someone's just trying to guess passwords on you. And so, seeing that kind of thing on the wire, this would give you an early tip that that's going on, and that you know that somebody's trying to access that system. You'd see a ton of packets, but it's hard to read those as fast as the packets go. And so that's really what the IDS system is going to do for you. It's going to only select out the things that really trigger an event that's interesting, as opposed to just normal traffic. Otherwise, it's really hard to see an event unless you've got a very, very slow network with not much going on and you're really gifted. Then you could do it.
And that's not going to be the CCDC network.
It's not going to be the CCDC network, and I know very, very, very few people who are that gifted. There's probably maybe a dozen in the world. And on most normal networks, they would be overwhelmed real fast. So you need machines to help you out. That's what this stuff is here for. One of the things we want to pay attention to also in the CCDC is there's going to be a lot of attacks from inside your network as well as outside.
Yeah, you get into my one machine and they hack from inside.
Yep. Well, count on that happening again. So if there's no further questions, I'm going to terminate the recording and just say thanks. And do you want to just go ahead and say we'll do PF Sense next month for October? First Friday in October, we'll do PF Sense. Lou and I will coordinate that. We'll generate a presentation. PF Sense is nice. It's free. You can download it and play with it yourself. It comes out as an ISO, but if you have a copy of VMware Workstation, you can build that up yourself in VMware Workstation. It's very easy to do. I'd recommend trying that out sometime if you have enough RAM on that machine. If you don't have, if you've got less than 4 gig of RAM, wouldn't recommend it so much. VMware is not going to be your friend. So with that, I want to say thank you for the people that came in tonight, and have a good evening.